Are the Bengals in trouble at backup quarterback? We'll talk about this coming up next on the Wincinnati podcast.
Yes. Hello, world. We got a special show as always. TJ Houshmandzada, Jimmy Chase, Coach Jimmy Burrow.
Time to be a Bengals
How do you
fan.
balance being a professional athlete and family obligation?
These are top 5 Bengals of all time.
All time, man.
Yeah.
Shock the world.
Welcome to the Wincinnati podcast. I am Ace. He is Zim. How you doing today, Zim?
I'm doing pretty good. Eating good. Had me a delicious salad. Me and Ace was chopping it up. Had a football game last night. Aside from that, I'm moving. I'm doing good, and excited to be here. I feel like that game kind of changed like the temperature a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, it actually did. I mean, depending on how you look at it, the Bengals did tie with the Falcons. It was a 13-13 game. It's better than being blown out, which, that was the first game. I don't think we really took much out of that except for evaluation. But this was one where you actually got to see the defensive starters get in there. But speaking of, on the show coming up, we're going to talk about some of the winners from that game. We'll also talk about some of the losers from that game. So which players we felt actually made the most of those circumstances, which players we felt didn't make the most of those circumstances. We'll also can't talk about the Bengals without talking about the offensive line. So we'll give you guys our thoughts on the offensive line depth, what we saw in the Falcons game. And then, of course, we'll talk about the big thing, the big question. Are we in trouble at backup quarterback? We'll get into that next. All right, being that this is the Wincinnati podcast, Zim, give me some of your winners from the Bengals-Falcons preseason game.
My number one winner, I'm all right. I'm not gonna go in any order. I thought that the game, for me. I just want to say, seeing starters out there changed, okay, here we go. So that was a good feeling overall. And I just think that that I wanted to start with, we're no longer in the whole period of I'm just trying to see can the depth guys play or whatever. But as luck would have it, I thought some guys increased their stock. Joseph Ossai, big winner tonight or last night, primarily because I think he is the guy that can free up Trey Hendrickson. And every time that I see him have success, I think about all the double teams or games where Trey Hendrickson was taken out of games. If Ossai is playing like how he played last night, not happening anymore. Big winner, interception, 2 pressures. I thought he had in the Bills game, in the AFC Championship game, there are flashes of him. If he could put it all together and give him more opportunities, it's over. It's a wrap. And he was a big winner. Are we ping-ponging this, or how are we doing this? Because I don't want to just keep on going. Give me. Matter of fact,
I would just say I would throw Ossai in there as well. I think you're right. I mean, the way that he played last night was like a man with his hair on fire. You talk about the interception. You talk about the pressure. I honestly was like, get that man out of there. In terms of a second winner, for me, I think you got to go with Andrei Iosivas. I mean, the way that he's been able to be put in certain situations with this team, I think speaks volumes. I think initially he didn't get targeted early, right? But once that drive got on the third down, he was immediately the person that they targeted. It was pretty clear. I think Joe Goodberry put out a stat talking about that he's had 20 targets in the preseason, and that's just through 2 games. So some of the guys he may have had in those numbers, that may have been for an entire preseason, and you're talking about a time where it could have been 3 or 4 games. He's already got that much in just 2.
What do you think that does as it relates? Why do you think the Bengals would give him that many targets? What do you think?
I think because they believe in him. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you watch the players and the staff and the interactions. Like, you don't just call anybody's number on third down. Like, when you need something, that's generally, if these were the starters, the Jamar Chase down, right? Like, you're going to Jamar Chase, you're going to T. Higgins. So for me, that just shows like what they believe Andrei Iosivas is capable of. They believe that he's a talented player. They know that he can bring in the catches. and they do not think that he's raw. I don't think that you would dial up a third down play for somebody that was raw.
Do you think from a roster construction standpoint, though, we had the conversation about they're probably going to give 7 guys. If DJ Ivy and those guys are playing good on special teams, maybe Stanley Morgan isn't there, and maybe he is, and they only carry 6. Right. But I kind of think that they're playing Yoshi that much or giving them that many targets because I think they're distinguishing to us that they're not really counting on them for special teams. And offensively wise, I think that they're going to go into like 4 wide sets. And I think they need to say, if one of these other guys are doubled up, we need to know, can we really do that? And maybe that's long term, but I think it's kind of distinguishing. They don't really see him as like a fringe roster guy that is just there for
fringe at all. He's on the roster. I mean, there's no way that he isn't. I know that when we talked before, we always thought Andrei was making this roster. I don't think he's a fringe guy at all. I think he's a lock. Other guys that may be on the fringe kind of side, like, to me, it's a night and day comparison between him and a guy like Kwame Lassiter, a guy like Cedric Jackson, a guy like even Stanley Morgan.
But do you think like week 1? Maybe I'm tripping because I could be completely wrong about this. Because remember how I was before the season, before we got to training camp, I was like, y'all talking like Yoshi gonna get real snaps. Like, we're going 3 wide. Right. I honestly feel like it's a little bit of a changing of the guards in the offenses there. I think they're going to say, let's open it up a little bit more. Maybe I'm just thinking on foreshadowing what I think. But remember how they started out last year in week 1 and we were so excited they came out and spread? I really think that they might think that instead of just 3 wide receivers and 11 personnel, I think the amount of targets that they gave this dude, like, they're trying to figure out, can we go 4 wide and 10 personnel and do that a lot? And be played like starting week 1, maybe he plays like 10, 15 snaps. Whereas if you would have asked me that before OTA, I'd have said, I don't think he gets in unless somebody gets hurt.
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely agree with that. I think that there was a little bit of a role, and it's kind of a sneaky role, because remember when we would see Mike Thomas come in the game from like time to time, it wasn't often. I think when I just looked at his snaps from week 1 last year in the season opener, he had 5 plays, right? That could be something where you see Yoshi come in for 4 to 5 plays, maybe get a target. And on some of those plays, they would be important, right? Because they would take a deep shot to Mike Thomas. He just wouldn't come down with it. So could they use Yoshi in a role similar to that? I think so. He could be a guy that's active, I think, on game day, because you just never know with the injuries. And I think that was something that they learned based off of what happened to them against Kansas City. Like, you need to have a guy that can play on the outside, ready, locked and loaded, ready to go. They did have plays where Stanley Morgan would get in, but it got to the point where people knew that we were running the ball because he was such a great blocker. It almost was kind of a tell for the defense that, okay, the Bengals are going to run the ball this time. I do think, like you said, if they do go 5 wide, come out that way, Yoshi is a guy that I think that they really want to get a lot of looks at, because him, Trenton Irwin, some of these guys might be able to do some things in there with the Bengals with the empty look.
My next winner, I'm going to go with Chris Evans. I thought he was kind of the forgotten man this all season. Chris Evans, I thought early in the game just looked like a young player with juice. He looked like what I want Chase Brown to look like, or what you want like a draft pick to look like. It almost felt like I was watching him, and I know I'm like being super over the top with it. It almost felt like I was watching him as like a young rookie all over again. He had the explosion in the runs. I thought he made the correct cuts. You think about what he did last week, even his kick return, he had juice on it. He's got a nice little bounce to his game, and I feel like the way that he bounces certain runs is like, it's like a fun style of running that I like. Whereas Mixon, you're going to get more. He'll jump laterally and jump out quick, and then he'll hit a corner and he's out. I thought Evans has a little bit more wiggle. And remember when we were talking to Reggie Bush comparisons, it's just a fun way of running. And I could tell when you're watching it, I thought that the defense was on his heels when he ran. And that's not an exaggeration. And to say that this guy might not like 100% he's making the roster now. But
Right.
to say like this guy is just like another guy, or we're worried about him as a pass protector is weak. Like, this is the Bengals. We're a unicorn. I had a tweet earlier. I said, I'm gonna take my unicorn horn and I'm gonna ram it up everybody's ass this year, or something. Like, I said something weird like that. But hypothetically, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, you got weapons, you have to use them. And
Right.
and a guy like Chris Evans, to me, is a weapon. I saw somebody write something on your Twitter or your account and say, yeah, I mean, Chris Evans is just like, I think they limited him to like a backup. And I was like, that's what the ops want you to do. This dude
Right.
needs to be integrated in third downs in going out on passes. I know the play that they had the busted screen or whatever, I thought he had enough room on that side. I was like, whoa, he's about to get it. But I don't know what was going on with that call. We're going to talk about quarterback play later. But to not let Chris Evans get his opportunities, because every single time that he does, something really good happens. And the reason why you know that they can't get rid of him on that strength is because if they were to think about going practice squad with this guy, 24 teams will claim him. Chris Evans might be the but see, before this season, this all season, I was ready. I said, well, they drafted Chase Brown, they got Travion. Chris Evans was like the forgotten man. A player on the team tell me like, hey, don't sleep on Chris. And I'm like, really, we doing that again? Yeah, we're doing that again.
Yeah, I'm with you on Chris Evans. I mean, no secret. Matter of fact, they tried to expose us, quote unquote, expose us in spaces for being big fans of Chris Evans, and that backfired on him tremendously throughout that game. That is why we have always had faith in Chris Evans, because we knew that this was in him. He just needed to get the opportunity. I agree with you on Chris Evans as a winner. Another person that I would probably point to in this game as a winner, Cedric Jackson. I kind of mentioned him a little earlier, Bo Jackson's cousin. I kind of thought that he was going to continue the same thing with the famous people's pretty much family members. Like before, we've had Holyfield's son. I thought it was going to be like, you hear this big name and you see the fame and all of that from it, but you don't get much from the player. I felt like Cedric Jackson in that game, I'm like, yeah, I need him on the practice squad. He showed me a lot from the receiver position. The fact that they had a lot of slants and stuff dialed up for him, screen plays and stuff like that, that speed is real. And I think that the kid definitely has some real potential. I'd even dare to say I feel like he may be over for me. And I tweeted this out at New Stripe City on Twitter. I think he might be ahead of Kwame Lassiter based off of what I saw last night. Now, obviously, Kwame Lassiter has a whole prior preseason. But if we're talking about right now, I feel like Cedric Jackson, to me, should be a guy that they keep on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, if you could keep both of them, I think Kwame's going to get snatched up. It'd probably be Zach Taylor's brother or something again, but I think he's getting snatched up. But Cedric, that's a good one, kind of under the radar a little bit. Yeah. Also, I'm going to go another one. This is probably my last offensive one I'm going to say on the winner side. I'm going to go Charlie Jones. I wouldn't even say critical on him last week. I just thought he played hesitant. I thought his his punt return yesterday, he looked very hesitant. Torn labrum, it is what it is. Like, psychologically, you got to get past it. I thought that he started routing dudes up. It started to feel, you could kind of see the wheels turning while we got to the third quarter. They're going to him on a couple out routes, couple comeback routes, whatever, and he's winning those routes. And that's all I wanted to see from him. The one throw that I thought he got his hands on, it was a ball that was thrown too far inside. I still would like to see him catch that, because in the NFL, like, that's just what's expected of him, because every ball that's going to be thrown your way isn't going to be perfect. So I do wish he could have got that one, but I thought he bounced back nicely. I think Yoshi is ahead of him on the wide receiver chart, but I think because he's shorthanded on his punt returns, he is your punt return guy. So Trent Taylor's gone. He's established that. I think he didn't do enough for me, but I thought in the receiving game, if he is the first slot off the bench, if Trent Irwin's the first outside off the bench, I'm cool with that. Trent Irwin, under the radar, just keeps on doing exactly what he's supposed to do every single time. He got a mean little cutback whenever he gets those little out routes on the outside. He always sticks his foot, his hand in the dirt, and he always turns it upfield. And I love that move that he does, and I'm surprised defenders still fall for it. But if he's the outside guy, Charlie Jones has got to be the first guy off the bench on the inside. And I think that's the tricky part about Yoshi to me. Is like, man, we got some talent, but the way that they're using them, it's just like these two guys, like, it makes me feel like they're going to go 4 wide a lot more than what they were before. We need, Irv Smith didn't play. I think Joe's going to go to Irv early, like a lot this year, but that's a whole nother topic.
No, for sure. I think Charlie Jones is another good one. I feel like I don't want to give away too many winners just because we could talk here all day. I actually got 2. I'm going to try to kind of throw in a little bit together because they're kind of battling each other, but they also kind of worked together yesterday in meeting at the quarterback, and that's Jeff Gunter and Raymond Johnson. Those 2 dudes, I think, really shined in the game. I'm not so sure. Like, I feel like Gunter probably has the best chance to make the roster, but I think Raymond did enough to let them know, like, this is a guy that –
It's not just Raymond.
Or Raymond or Raymond. I'll say Raymond. You're probably right. It probably is Raymond. I'm probably.
I'm about to say, hold up. I've been saying Raymond all this time.
So Raymond, if you are listening, bro, my bad. Raymond Johnson. I definitely know your name now after last night. The way that he was playing out there, and him and Jeff Gunter together, they definitely made a case for them to at least bare minimum make the practice squad. So I thought that those dudes did some things. Did you have any more winners? Are we giving out too many winners at the Wincinnati podcast?
Nah. I don't want to go in too crazy, but that's all my winners on the offensive side. I didn't have that many on the defensive side. I'm gonna just go through them really quick. I thought DJ Ivy rebounded really well, and he had the game pretty much saving play, rap, whatever. I thought overall he tackled well, but he got cooked a little bit. I thought DJ Turner started off. He had a rough drive in there, but he kind of came back, and I thought what he did was really good too. Also, I've already said Ossai earlier. Also, the only other person I was going to think about, I thought Battle had some really good hits. The starters like Cam Taylor-Britt laying people out early in that game. I mean, I expect Cam Taylor hit to hit. So it is what it is on that. I thought he played really good. I can't get over that. Oh, another guy I want to go to, Cam Sample. If Cam Sample is playing like that, a lot of people aren't going to like this. I think at this point, Miles, well, depending on where you fall, Miles Murphy is, to me, the Sam Hubbard replacement at some point. But Miles Murphy this year is a guy that keeps Trey Hendrickson fresh. Miles Murphy will be in there to stop run, first or second down, sparingly thrown in with his athleticism. I think he's a high-tier run defender. But if Cam Sample is playing like how he's been playing and how he played last night, Cam Sample is a guy that could be added to the rotation. And you talk about a NASCAR practice, Ossai and Cam Sample, all I've been saying is they cannot be singled up. If they're playing like that, then Trey Hendrickson, the way that he takes his route around and he bends that corner, it forces guys to step up in the pocket. If Cam Sample and Ossai are winning like how I think they're going to win, then the Murphy thing, you might not get but 3 sacks from him, but those same 6 sacks that we were saying we want from Miles Murphy, I think you can get them from Cam Sample or even close. Maybe he gets 5.5 or something like that. But that's still winning formula, still winning football. BJ Hill is kept fresh, and now you got this guy. But Cam Sample looks different, bro.
Facts. So let's switch to the flip side of things, the losers. For me, I got to just start here, man. Trevor Siemian looked like a dumpster truck last night, if I'm being honest. He started off looking solid because it was like, okay, well, maybe, preseason game 1, maybe that was just him having to play with, third team players and all of that. But as soon as like the second quarter hit, this guy was just abysmal, man. I mean, there was nothing that really inspired you. There were no drives that really said this is a guy that should be the backup quarterback. Like you talked about, I sent out a tweet, and it was because of how bad Trevor Siemian was playing last night. I mean, honestly, I didn't feel comfortable at all. It didn't seem like a guy that's been a veteran. Didn't seem like that same guy that was on the Broncos that came to Cincinnati and did his thing against us way back when. But Trevor Siemian, bro, that was awful. That was uninspiring. Nothing about his performance yesterday had me even convinced that he should be on the roster. What about you?
Two different things. I'm 100% with you, partner. My expectations of the backup, though, maybe it's two different conversations. One is if Joe Burrow goes down, I keep on seeing people write this, and it's the most cliche shit that's on the internet right now. And I feel like it's like a conceding defeat type of thing. If Joe Burrow goes down, our season's screwed. Yes, in theory it is, but there are examples like a Nick Foles that when the quarterback did go down, that you had a guy that came in, or shit. I mean, Drew Bledsoe went down and Tom Brady came in. I don't, what I'm saying. Whatever you want to look at as an example, it doesn't mean that everything is all over. For what I want from a backup quarterback is a guy that if Joe is out between 1 and let's say 5 games, he could keep you afloat. Maybe he wins 2, loses 3, but keep me afloat. And you're 100% right. If Siemian is playing like the way that he played last night, you're 0-5. And that might, I don't think that's an overreaction. You're 0-5 if he plays like that. If Browning plays like that, I thought his depth in the pocket makes the offensive line look so much worse than what it really is. And he doesn't have an NFL arm. Those two together just aren't good enough to win football games in the National Football League. And I get Trevor Siemian has had success before. He's just not looking comfortable, and he doesn't look like he believes in his wide receivers, and he surely doesn't believe in the offensive line to block it. Even if he would have took some sacks and stood in the pocket on some of those dropbacks, I might feel a little bit different. But the way that he was bailing on stuff, I get it. I'm at home, I'm watching on the couch, and I'm not an NFL player, and I don't have 280-pound, 300-pound men running at me trying to knock me out. I get that. But he is. And the way that I thought he looked, it just looked scared and timid, and I don't think you could win a game without him. So I want everybody to kind of distinguish the two. It's like, yes, if Joe Burrow goes out for a whole season or something like that, yes, your Super Bowl aspirations are probably over. But in a circumstance where maybe he re-aggravates something or whatever, you want a quarterback that can keep you afloat. And I don't think those guys are good enough. What do you think is a solution for that?
A solution for the backup quarterback position?
Ace Tobin is in the building, and you got to make something happen.
So I would probably say that you need to look at guys outside the building. I mean, options that are outside the building. At this point, I wouldn't even mind entertaining. I don't want to say a trade. Like if you are trading, I'm only thinking like a 7th-round pick. But, looking for somebody that's at least a decent backup quarterback, something that's like Minshew level. I don't think you need like Taylor Heineke last night. Like that would be fine. But something like that, they need somebody that
I wish we had that.
On the bench.
I saw Taylor Heineke, and he didn't have the greatest game of all time, but he gave his guys a chance. And if you got the Migos, that's what you're saying. Even look at the throw at the end of the game. If that's Heineke throwing that for the Bengals, Jamar Chase on a one-on-one situation, that's a touchdown. And that's all I need, so
for sure.
Heineke would have been perfect. A guy's name that keeps on coming up, I don't want to dwell on it too long. I don't know. Did I go out of turn with this? Because we're still talking losers.
Yeah, it's all good. We can get into it. We'll just skip it later.
No, we can go to quarterbacks later. Let's continue with the losers. Another loser, I'm gonna go with I haven't seen the tape on this, but Jackson Carman, I thought early in the game was okay. He was good enough, and he was solid at certain points. Later in the game, he looks disinterested. Now, one of the plays I was giving him a lot of flack when I watched it, I went back and watched that play, and I don't know if Browning, like somebody explain this to me. How do you call a screen, run the play, and then never look at the screen, man? So you can see the offensive line. I thought the releases from the offensive line were terrible if it was a screen. but he's not even looking at the screen, man. So I'm like, you're the quarterback and you called that and you didn't know that you were throwing a screen, but he invited all the people to come in. So initially watching the game, I'm just watching Carman's, man. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And then I watch, okay, cool. He had other reps in there where I thought he was disinterested. They move him around. Maybe he's tired at the end of the game. I don't know. But he doesn't look like a guy. And we're just saying this over and over every week. If they're going to trade somebody, I think there's a team out there that will say, no, we could use his size, use his playoff experience, and maybe go get me a backup tight end or give me a backup center. But that's one of my biggest losers right there with Jackson Carman.
I throw another one on there. Devin Asiasi. It seems like ever since they made the decision to really add him to the roster, he just really hasn't, stepped up and made an impact, which I'm kind of disappointed with because, this guy was a higher round draft pick that came from the New England Patriots, but he's really failed to establish himself as anything on this roster in an area such as tight end, which I feel like is wide open. We didn't get our man Tanner Hudson, wasn't able to play in this game. So he wasn't there. You would think that he would step up in this case. He did not. Drew Sample even stepped up. Drew Sample even had a catch early. So, to me, I would say Devin Asiasi. I just don't even understand how this guy makes the roster now in a weak room at tight end. I mean, I feel like it's a prime opportunity for him.
The biggest name coming up this week is Hudson. If Tanner Hudson is available and he gives them like 2 catches and he looks good blocking, Asiasi is adios. The only other thing I would say is if they were going to carry, like if you're carrying 3, it's Sample, Hudson, and I don't see a reason to carry 4 because I feel like they're going to carry 7 wide receivers, and then you got Mitchell Wilcox that can come at any point in the season later on, maybe later on after he's PUP or IR or whatever, come at maybe week 6, maybe he takes over like Hudson. But I would like to see them go make a trade for like a backup tight end. What's the dude with the I think he's got like a Nigerian name or something to do, the backup tight end, the athletic dude from the Broncos. Albert O. Yeah, like make a trade for like somebody like that. Jets got like an abundance of tight ends or whatever. I think somebody like that's had like guys go down at camp that need offensive line help. I think there's a coach out there, like maybe, I don't know, do the Broncos still got Kubiak? I think if the coach has a really good offensive line coach or something like that, I think they could say, nah, we could work with Carman. And at the same time, this was a potential cut, or we already have other tight ends like a team like the Jets. That's what I would target with, the whole Asiasi thing or this Tanner Hudson thing, because I think you could sneak Tanner Hudson possibly on a practice squad. And that's the good part about him. I don't know if enough teams got enough tape on him at this point with limited film to say that, we got to go get this guy fresh off a concussion. I think you can sneak him on there, and then you go get that tight end that I'm talking about.
I'm going to probably say a controversial one. I just haven't seen it yet based off of where the expectations should be at. So, this guy actually ended up scoring the game tying touchdown for us, and that's Chase Brown. I haven't seen enough from Chase Brown to say like he's better than Chris Evans or he's the clear number 2 or he should be the guy. Obviously, both of those guys had to deal with poor offensive line play last night. I just felt like Chris Evans was able to still have an impact on the game a little bit more. And Chase Brown, in my opinion, from game 1 to game 2, he didn't really do anything to separate himself, I think, as that lead dog. And so I'm going to say that he kind of lost out on this one because I think a lot of people, Bengals fans included, if you were to ask them before the preseason started, who would start between Chris Evans and Chase Brown, everybody would say Chase Brown. I think now if you ask them that same question, they would say Chris Evans. And I think that, he's outplayed him. And I think his best run of the night, outside of I think he had a 10-yard run, ended the game with 2 yards per carry, which is still under Chris Evans. He didn't do much better at 2.1. But the first time that I actually saw him like run with the purpose was that touchdown. Like every time that he was getting the ball, I was just like, where is it at? Where's this explosiveness?
Right. He showed it on the touchdown run.
That's what I said. That's the only
Yeah.
that's the only time that I saw it. Whenever it was
I
like a
thought
regular run.
I thought he was the victim of 2 blown up plays. I thought 2 plays that got blown up in the backfield. But his whole identification, I thought, was like a little bit off. Where I'm looking at Chris Evans, he had a play that literally could have got stopped in the backfield. He makes a jump cut, turns it into 2. Browning does the little loop-de-loo. Backyard football finds Chris Evans. Chris Evans does a good job to get to the sticks on that little catch play that he had.
That was a huge play.
That was a big play. And so, see, my expectations of Chase Brown are different. I think everybody's saying Pacheco, and then looking at what the Chiefs did with like late round picks and stuff like that, and just saying like that's not normal. Like I give them credit for that. That's not normal to me. And sometimes I don't know. I just looked at Joe Mixon. Everybody knows, like, you could call it a bias or whatever. I'm just higher up on Joe Mixon than a lot of other fans.
No. So I always expected Joe to be the starter. I just thought that he would feel like that Piron role and that he would bring something else to the position and just be a souped up Piron. I never thought that he would challenge Joe Mixon. I was never in the camp that he should start.
I think he will be. I think he will be eventually. It might be different than what Bengals fans are used to in this regard. I think that they'll give them possibly the keys to the car for Chase Brown if he could show them enough, like maybe throughout the season. Maybe
let's take the Bengals out of it. If you were the Bengals right now, let's say Joe Mixon had to miss time, who would you rather play? Because I would rather play Chris Evans.
What a guy that nobody's talking about, and I know he wasn't there, is Travion Williams. I don't know if he's the lead back, but I'm a lot higher on Travion too. That's another thing with the Chase Brown conversation to me that I think people was getting lost in the sauce a little bit to me. In practice, they trust him in pass pro a lot more than any of these guys. Last year, they were playing Travion Williams in pass pro ahead of Evans, ahead of Mixon, ahead of all of that stuff. So naturally, I'm thinking that's the new Piron anyway. But if Mixon were to go down,
the thing is he can't stay healthy, man. He's not durable. That's my only issue. I love Travion. I think that you're right. I think he's the best pass protector. I honestly think if healthy, he's probably the safest bet. But it's always when he's healthy. And see, AFC North, I just don't know, bro.
See, for me, Chase Brown to me is a project to me. Like the ball security stuff like that. I just don't look. I almost looked at him like Yoshi. I don't see it. I never saw him when we drafted him. Now, if they would have drafted like Roschon Johnson, like a little bit early, I think they would have had to draft him like in the 3rd. That's who I really wanted. I thought that wasn't a project. That's an NFL ready running back. But I think the upside on Chase Brown, I wasn't a big Chase Brown like fan, but I was like, well, the upside on him like later on, I really like it. In his ability to make guys miss, I really, really like it. All the carries that he had, I really, really like it. But I just didn't see him as a pro-ready running back out the gate. I think Travion's injury history is concerning, but I just think that the way that they're going to use him, I don't think that he's going to get a lot of work in that regard. I think, honestly, right now, I think if Mixon was to get dinged up, Chris Evans is the first man off the bench. I really do. And I don't think it's Chase Brown. And I'm not saying that just because, well, partially from last night. I felt like this going into the game that Chase Brown hadn't showed me enough shiftiness or whatever I need to see to warrant him being anything yet. You know, he just hasn't got there yet. That doesn't mean he sucks. I just thought that Chris Evans, so far, what he offers as a receiving back, that's how I looked at the pecking order. And Travion Williams, I think that they just were cautious. I think they're doing this with Travion Williams because they are counting on him week 1 to be the pass pro guy. And I think that they feel like he's been in the system so long, kind of like how they're using Joe Burrow's injury or whatever. It's like we know who this is. We don't, so the injury thing, I get it, but I think he's ready right now, and he could have played last night. But I think they know that they're going to count on him so much that they're like, why would we play him right now? And that's how I took it. I didn't take it as he's injured again. I just think he had a sprained ankle and then he's back. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, with Chase Brown, it's like, the back-to-back games with 1 yards per carry, right? And I get people talking about the offensive line, but behind that same offensive line, the first time Chris Evans ran for an average of 7 yards per carry. So I just expected more juice with the running and stuff like that. That's not to say that the kid isn't going to be anything. I just think if you were a guy that came into the preseason as people viewed you as the starter and now it's cloudy, I would just have to say that you're on the losing side right now of it.
No,
Like
that's a fact.
Jackson Carman, right? Like, not saying there was abundance of people saying he would start over Jonah, but there was a lot of people said that he could compete with Jonah. They wanted to see the best man out there. I think right now it's obvious that Jonah's the starter, right? Like, so you wouldn't say that Jackson Carman is a winner. So for me, that's just kind of how I looked at it. Did you have any other losers other than Chase Brown?
I got a half loser, and I'm gonna go with DJ Turner. And this is only this is just me kind of being a little nitpicky.
But this is in the scope of this game. It's not like in the scope of it, period.
In the scope
of the winning list the last time.
In the scope of this game, it kind of relates to what I think they're going to do week one. Week one, I don't think Cheeto is going to be thrown out there 40 snaps. I just don't. Like, he's not that, like, they got him mirroring guys at practice. I think they're going to start ramping it up now that the doors are closed. Now they're going to start letting him get full reps. I just don't think in this short amount of time that we got coming up that they're going to say he's going to play all these snaps. And I think DJ Turner is going to be playing a lot of snaps. I thought the reason why I got him as a loser, to get cooked by Mac Hollins, like, who I don't really rate that high, I guess. And he is, I seen him at camp killing people. He is bigger, he is stronger, he is fat. But DJ Turner, to me, is like more of a technician. And I thought early in that game, guys were cooking DJ Turner. I thought he had like 4 or 5. I gotta go look at the numbers. Maybe I'll pull it up while we on here now. But I thought DJ Turner gave up a bunch of catches. And if that's week one, Donovan Peoples-Jones, or week one he gets lined up with Amari or something like that, because they're not gonna have Cam Taylor-Britt just trailing going around the whole thing. If he's lined up on Amari Cooper and those guys are routing you up like that, to me, I thought it just wasn't good enough for what we need. And now when Ludini's defense gets into the red zone, you see how everything's condensed and it's hard to score on them. So, but in that open field, I thought he was getting exposed. And I think maybe they did it on purpose and gave him one-on-one situations, but I just thought he was getting cooked early.
I think for me, if I had to put a loser and I wanted to group a bunch of people into it, offensive line. The offensive line looked so terrible at points last year. Now, I don't know if that's on, a group of guys, maybe, but you just didn't see anything inspiring. I mean, we talked about Jake the Snake. Jake the Snake Browning had 50 yards rushing. Why? Because the pocket kept collapsing.
Did he really?
He had 50 yards rushing.
What?
Rushing.
I know he had the big run.
I just remember at one point it was just like, man, the line looks bad. Like, I get it. Keeping it a stack, it is second and third teamers, so you don't expect world beaters. But the whole Jackson Kirkland thing, I have to agree with Honest Fan. Nah, he's not it. He's not it. Like, I don't know who else is it.
You know who isn't it? Even Trey Hill is not it.
Trey Hill isn't it.
The bigger conversation
might not be it. Like, he
is not it. I'm low key just hoping that like a general manager for another team is listening to this and be like, man, Jackson Carman, all right. And then, like, you see, I'm trying to trade this. I'm trying to get him off the team. Jackson Carman is not it. He's never been it. But hold on. Let me say this though. My overall gripe with the offensive line, I like our starting five, but to me, long term, it's a big conversation piece because the maturation of Joe Burrow depends on the development of offensive line play. You can't just throw people that say, "Oh, well, we can't sign T. Higgins and Jamar Chase." You could use that money for offensive line. You can't just throw money at offensive line every single offseason and think because that's just as egregious as paying 2 number ones. You couldn't pay 5 guys. Eventually, like Orlando Browns, you might get a couple of those. You might get a couple of ILs, but you got to have some Volsons in there. And I just think the development of these guys is the bigger issue. Right. Outside of Deontay Smith, who has gotten better since they got here? Like Volson, I just thought he learned on the fly. But like
Right.
who? Like Trey Hill didn't get better. The Kirkland kid,
Nobody
you know,
has.
like
You're right.
none of
There's
these
been no
none of
development.
these dudes got better. None of them.
No.
Like we're saying the same thing about Carman that we were saying. What is it? 3 years ago now.
Yep.
We're saying the
And
same
the development of Carman has been, not to throw him bail because I'm not saying that he's it, but you've seen something similar with these other guys. They throw him at one position, then they throw him at another one, then he's playing two more. Like, so Jackson Carman, you had him at left guard. Then when, the injuries happened, you had him at left tackle. Then you said, hey, now you're playing right tackle this offseason. He looks bad at right tackle. You immediately throw him back to left tackle. You've seen the same with Deontay Smith. He's at tackle, then he's a guard, then he's this and that. And we've seen them do that with a lot of these guys. Trey Hill as well. I mean, they had Max Sharping playing center at one point in camp. And it's like, at the end of the day, like you're saying, somebody has to develop these guys. Like, I get it. We have guys that are veterans that are ready in a pinch. But if we actually had guys that could develop our linemen, when we get into these situations where these guys have to get in for a game, they wouldn't look that bad if they had somebody developing them. So I'm not trying to take shots at the coaching staff, but they've got to do a better job of developing these guys. And I get it. When you're working with the starters, sometimes Frank Pollock may not have time to develop the other guys. So if that's the assistant coach for the offensive lineman, they've got to do something better. They got to do something better because these guys, like Zim just pointed out, do not look like they're getting better ever since they've entered the building. They still seem like the same guys they were when they entered it. Another loser that I want to say real quick, and I just think that because I'm putting him on this list because he could have been a winner, and that's going to be my guy, Marcus Bailey. He had 2 opportunities to get a pick. Either one of those, I think, puts him on as a winner. It kind of threw me off because I'm not used to watching Marcus Bailey drop interceptions, so that kind of threw it off for me. But we talked a little bit earlier, and we kind of already have been talking about the offensive line. The offensive line, bro, like what can we do to fix this problem? Why aren't they bringing in some of the guys that are available out there, period? And is this something where they're going to have to look at fixing it on cut down day? Is it something that, Lyle fixes when he gets back in terms of depth, or what are your feelings about the offensive line?
I like the starting 5, bro. But outside of that, it's just, y'all know, like last season, they hired the dude. I can't think of his name. I don't know why I want to say the secondary coach's name so bad. But for whatever reason, like it's just that's a problem for me, I think, long term. Because eventually Joe Burrow is going to have a team that you're going to say, all right, now we're getting into Tom Brady mode. Like when he gets around like 28 or something like that, he's not going to have 2 number 1 wide receivers like at that point in his career. And when he gets to that point, you got to have some guys that you could develop. You can't just throw money at the position over and over again. And even if you did, counting on all those guys to be healthy, it's just not good business. So overall, that's how I feel. I feel like when the Bengals were on a 10-game win streak, I thought the offensive line was incredible. They gave up 17 sacks in a 10-game span. Remember, 4 of them came in that bogus coin flip game. So, but that's averaging 1.7 sacks or whatever a game. So I'm not mad at that. Joe Burrow was one of the least sacked quarterbacks in that streak when they finally got it together. I think now that they knew that they were going to go into pin and pull systems and being pretty much blocking man-to-man, no zone concepts or whatever. When they switched over to that, I think now they have to go get the guys that match that personnel. So now you're not getting like nimble foot guys. You're getting strength guys that can hold anchor and be able to push people and say, I'm bigger and I'm stronger and I'm faster than you. And now they got to go and move forward with that. And they didn't draft any guys in the draft this past year. So I just think that's, I don't know, that it does kind of bother me long term. I think this season we're fine, but it's not enough. On the cut down day, they got to go get a guy. I think that they carry like 8, 9 maybe, and the 9 would be Cody.
Why isn't Dalton Risner on this roster? Why is he just
I think Dalton Risner is doing the same thing for everybody. He's waiting for somebody of like a high level or starting caliber guy to go down so that he could pop up at camp and say, hey, look at me, I'm Dalton. I feel like that's what he's going to do. And his agent is probably telling him to do that right now. And he's just playing a waiting game. And, that I think that's why nobody has signed him.
For sure.
I don't know of anybody else that I feel like can help with. That's why I think the cut down day is so important. And I think the Bengals 1,000%, whoever their waiver claim is, I think it's an offensive lineman or another tight end. Those are my two picks that I think that they would do. I think they solved a lot. Remember all off season, I was saying, man, I don't know. Is Zach Carter's taking a step? Cam Sample is taking a step. So now I'm not even looking at that as hard as I was. So now I'm ready. I'm ready to go. And I just think that they got to go get a guy at offensive line. But
for sure.
Don't you feel like that's just the whole NFL though? Like it's just like
maybe.
Does everybody else's backup suck as much as ours?
I don't know, man. Ours are very bad. But I think it is a league-wide issue for sure. And I think it is a struggle. But when you have the good ones, the good coaches like Bill Callahan, they develop those guys. And that's not a shot at Frank Pollock at all. I'm just saying, like, there are some people out there that are really good at developing linemen as well. But I kind of gave my thoughts earlier about the backup quarterback position. I didn't give you the floor to give yours because we said that we would talk about it later in the show. Talk to the people about the backup quarterback situation and how you would kind of solve it as GM Zim Tobin.
Cam Newton. That's what I would do. And it sounds crazy to everybody, but I feel like they view Cam like how they view Odell Beckham Jr. as some locker cancer dude. When he was with the Patriots, you didn't hear a peep out of him. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, them two alone gonna have him in shape. You could say you could stick your nose up at it and say, we don't need no Cam Newton. You don't really want to win a Super Bowl like I do. It is Super Bowl or bust. Now, I'm not saying that Cam is the only option, but bro, he's a Super Bowl caliber quarterback that is gone. I mean, I'm sorry, a quarterback that's gone to a Super Bowl. He's at a point where he has to take anything that anybody's offering. So literally the same money, the $2 million, $3 million that y'all paying Trevor Siemian, you could get the same money to Cam. You could say, man, I don't think his arm is cooked. None of these dudes that are on the roster are cooking anything with their arm. Their arms are shot. So that argument is done. Running ability, being able to scramble, just throw bubble screens, being proficient in his game, being able to like move the chains, and just at the very least, you saw him with the Patriots. He would have games where he have 140 yards and just run the offense. That's all I really need. As far as like the locker room stuff, none of y'all know Trevor Siemian. Yet for all y'all know, he might have been telling Joe Burrow, like, I don't like you yesterday. Like, you're just going off of perception. And when somebody like Cam Newton, it's the problem that I feel like is wrong with America. This happens to me and you a lot. It happens to me a lot. Somebody that's a little bit more outspoken, that's actually able to speak on certain things, they start to get a reputation where people say, why don't that guy just shut up? Well, we can't all just shut up and dribble. And I feel like he said some things that I don't agree with, just like anybody else has said some things I don't agree with. I know that Cam Newton wants to win. You might say, well, he probably wants to be the starter. Shit, what's wrong with that? Okay. He's not going to be the starter because Joe Burrow is your starter, but you want a guy that is a dog that knows that he's going to win. And if it ain't Cam, give me somebody that wants to win like that. That's who I want. And I think that that's my argument for him. There are other guys that I think has had little success in the league. Somebody mentioned Brock Osweiler. What's the difference between Brock Osweiler and Trevor Siemian? Like Cam Newton will cook with these wide receivers. I'm sorry. At the very least, he would throw jump ball opportunities. Maybe he scrambles a little too much. At this age, I don't even know if he's running like he would, right? Accuracy wise, bro, Browning, like I just don't get the argument against him, bro. Like, I don't know. That's what I would do.
Yeah. I mean, after what I saw yesterday, I'm open to anybody, man. I'm open to anybody.
Marvin Sanu. I said Marvin.
Marvin Sanu definitely could.
Yeah, most
throw better than some of those guys yesterday.
Most Sanu on Twitter said, "Yeah, I could probably play backup for the Bengals."
That's how bad it was. So Another thing for us to wrap up the show is the overall grade. What are you giving the overall grade for this performance?
C plus. I thought that first string got beat up on that first drive, made a play. Ludini came back and cooked. Offense didn't do anything pretty much the whole game. They're winners. We went over losers, but I give it overall C plus.
Yeah, I would probably give them a C as well. I thought that, like you mentioned, the first team defense looked shaky. I think that would be a nice way of saying it, because if now it could also be this. Like, I actually think Atlanta's offense might actually be, they might have something there. I'm not gonna lie. The quarterback looked a lot better than I thought in Desmond Ridder. They do have some weapons there. When you talk about Kyle Pitts, you talk about Bijan.
How did we go a whole 50
Raymond,
minutes and we didn't talk Bijan, bro?
Bijan, yeah,
hey,
Bijan is the real deal. So, like, for me, I almost want to say, like, I feel like the offense would have scored that drive if the offensive line didn't hold them back, like, that entire first series. But they have weapons, so maybe the defense is just shaking some of the rust off. So that was, like, kind of eye-opening. But, the quarterback play brought it down a lot. But then you had exciting things like Iosivas, Chris Evans, some of the winners that we talked about. At the end of the day, they came down. It never seemed like we were going to score a touchdown, and Jake Browning did it. Now, I will say this. Jake Browning, if they keep a backup quarterback on the roster, it needs to be Jake Browning. It needs to be Jake the Snake. But I'm gonna give them a C, man. I don't even know if I could put the plus in there, man. It was pretty average. But yeah, that's what I would give them. Was there anything that you wanted to get into before we get out of here, brother?
Let me ask you this. Is there somebody on your radar on a cut down date? Like Ryan just messaged us and talked about the Jets running back. Y'all know that it's been rumored that Michael Carter could be cut.
Yes, Michael Carter. He's in a big. I think there's a lot of people on the Jets.
Bro, it's a lot of guys, bro.
Interested in. There's a lot of guys on the Jets that I'd be interested in. I don't know how Mike White is faring in his quarterback competition. But you talk about the Jets too, the tight end position. Like anybody that's got an extra tight end, offensive lineman, which I feel like, honestly, if any offensive linemen are available, it's gonna be like when Jay's released. Like every team is gonna be putting in a claim to try to get that person because everybody doesn't have good backups, or everybody might have issues on their starting offensive lineman. But yeah, Michael Carter, I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
If you guys can do me all a favor, got 130 people in, guys and girls. When this show is over, comment a player that you think maybe a target that you're thinking. I would like if you can. I just want to kind of just get an idea. I haven't really entertained this that much. Somebody said Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but like when this show is over, if you can, give us a thumbs up, whatever, tell a friend. But I would like if you could help us out, comment on there and just tell us like a player that you think is on the radar, that you think is a potential cut, somebody that you think would come to the team. I also want to say shout out to y'all for checking us out. I know we're chilling on a Saturday. I enjoyed the show today, but we need your support more than ever. Ace is about to drop his new stuff on his site, newstrikecity.com. I just re-released a bunch of new stuff on zimhude.com. My Burrow 316 design, and I got some real cool stuff coming out. So if you always wanted to support, we don't really, we're just in here chilling with y'all. Make sure that if you did want to support, make sure y'all check out our sites. I feel like the gear for the Bengals is not that cool. Like sometimes when I go to stores, but we got some dope stuff. So make sure you do that. And then, like I said, after the show, just comment, like, try to retweet, whatever you can do to help us out. Help out the little man trying to come up in the world. That's all I'm saying.
Facts, for sure. And anything that you guys can do helps, whether that's liking, any of that. We truly appreciate that. We'll be back with you guys possibly next week. So stay tuned. Hit that notification bell so you can know when we go live. We'll be back to 2 shows a week. You can also catch the Bengals Pulse with Jake and Mon. So definitely be sure. And we're also going to do a big Wincinnati before the season show. So stay tuned for that. Follow us on Twitter at New Stripe City, at Zimhude, at Wincinnati Pod. And definitely keep rocking with us. We appreciate you. And we got to end this with a yes.
Sirs!
Yes.
Hello, world. We got a special show, as always. TJ Houshmandzada, Jimmy Chase, Coach Jimmy Burrow.
How do you balance being a professional athlete and family obligation?
These are top 5 Bengals of all time.
All time, man.
Shock the world.